We're going to go ahead and start. My name is Melvyn Jeter. I'm from Illinois Wesleyan University. I've been there since 1986, and I teach several courses, Texas style. Some of you know it as the Moore method or modified Moore method, but the Texas method is the name that we used to use. I was introduced to this method at North Texas State University, which is now the University of North Texas, back in 1965, and continued taking courses from people that use the Texas method at Oklahoma State University. The Texas method was quite a bit different from some of the methods that we hear about today. And so what I wanted to do was just briefly highlight what I thought was the important aspects of the Texas method at the University of North Texas and Oklahoma State, and then to tell you how students seem to be impacted by those methods in their careers. A lot of people say, well, this is only meant to train people to be PhDs or research mathematicians. And sure, that's true for some students. But we get a lot of alumni that come back and tell us that it was these courses that were so important in their careers, and they all kind of have a uniform response. In fact, I saw it out in the lobby. There's some books out there where they have letters from people, and they talk about how the Texas method impacted their career later on. So what I was going to do originally was just go over the highlight of the points as I know them, and then go through some of the comments from former students. But then I had the opportunity to bring one of my former students, Carl Pierberg, who was Illinois Wesleyan's Outstanding Young Alumni in 2012, and I've heard him give 2 talks about his career, and he has a very unusual career, as you'll find out. So I'm just going to highlight what the Texas method was for me and how I teach it now, and then turn it over to Carl. Now, the key features of the Texas method, I think, are the following. The objective of the method is to instill in each student the understanding and confidence that they can solve difficult problems and that they can create knowledge. The ability to create knowledge is far more important than the ability to reproduce knowledge. In these courses, students are given a list of definitions, axioms, and problems. Some of the problems are easy. Some of the problems are difficult. Some of the problems are just flat challenging, and some are open-ended. The problems are to be worked outside the class and presented inside the class to the peers. Outside the class, students must work independently. They may not talk to anybody. They may not look at the internet. They may not read books in the library. They may not read anything. The work that they're to present in class is to be solely their own. And in fact, I always thought as a student that if you were caught doing anything other than that, you would be removed from the university. It would be extreme plagiarism. Some people think that means you leave students completely on their own. Nothing could be further from the truth. What you need to do, you may hand out this set of problems, but then sometimes you have to modify the problems. You have to ask questions that kind of will lead people to think in the right way so that they can discover solutions. One example, sometimes whenever somebody proves a theorem in class, I may give some examples just as comments, and the examples at the time are just examples, but later on, those examples may provide a way of doing a very difficult proof that students otherwise might not be able to do. So you don't just leave them on their own. In the classroom, students are presented to present their work to their peers and field the questions by their peers. In other words, they have to present orally a good presentation. And if an error is discovered, the peers may discuss the error, but they may not correct it. Many of my students feel it's theft for somebody to tell them how to correct a difficulty. They want to do it themselves. The class peers or referees or judges of the work. Together, the students in the class will create mathematics, and I think it's the ultimate group activity. The course is run as a mathematical research activity where students are encouraged to make and explore their own conjectures. Each student must contribute. If somebody asks a dumb question in class, we don't say it's a dumb question, we add it to a list of problems as a conjecture. Usually the student comes back the next day or so and can prove that it's wrong or it's right. All work must be presented in an acceptable oral and written form. I will require students to rewrite and represent if it's not in that sort of form. An important aspect of the method is the expectation of students to work independently for extended period of time on challenging problems. This is where the real growth takes place. These normally are not 15-minute problems. They're not one-day problems. Some of the problems take a considerable amount of time. Some of the problems are not worked in class. Students are taught to consider mistakes as opportunities to explore and grow. I've seen a lot of good mathematics that developed when exploring somebody's mistakes. So that's basically the Texas method that I know. You worked independently for extended period of time on difficult problems, and then you had to present this in a proper oral and a proper written form to your colleagues. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to one of my former students, Carl Pierberg, and he has a very unusual job, which I'm going to let him describe.
I am the senior director of football systems for the Atlanta Falcons. Basically what that means is I'm the football nerd. I come into play pretty much wherever IT and statistics and football come together. So it's a very fun and interesting kind of a role for me. Just a real brief history on me. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. I did attend Illinois Wesleyan University, where I was a math computer science major. I was a math computer science major. I did play football at Illinois Wesleyan, and for me, the small liberal arts, education was ideal for me. It was great to be in smaller classrooms, know my professors. I had Dr. Jeter several times when I was doing my undergrad. And as I kind of put that last bullet point there, that 440 topology class really changed my life and really impacted me. I then graduated. Dr. Jeter was the professor for me, by the way, that was the A that I had to get, and that I didn't get forever until I worked and finally got it. And that's one of my trophy moments of my life, was that first A in calculus. So I graduated, was a consultant, and then went to work for the NFL for the last 13 years or so. I was with the Chicago Bears for 3, and then moved down to Atlanta for the last 9 or so. And I'm currently the senior director of football systems. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that job is. I really describe it as the intersection of nerd and football. I just kind of said that. Again, I come into play wherever any kind of a computer type or IT request comes into play and results with football. So I do a lot of data analysis. I do a lot of data stacking. Programming is a big part of what I do. It's really not overtly mathematical. I'm not Moneyball guy. I'm not running complex computations. Half of what I've heard today, I don't remember or understand any of. But what it is, it's about effectively creating systems, and that's where topology really came in and helped me to understand how to think and how to put stuff together. At the end of the day, I solve problems. That's really how I add value to my team. Right? You can find better programmers than I can. You can find better data analysis guys. But for someone that can come in and apply logic and break down problems, that's really at the core of what I do. I'm also blessed to work with a team that will include me as part of their team. And I'll get to more of that in a minute. But I have a football team full of coaches and GMs that will talk to me and listen to me. And that is more rare than you would think. So last little thing I'm going to do here is talk about, see here, I'm going to screw it up again. Just some 3 key things that kind of the Texas method taught me, and I'm going to just share them with you. Again, not overtly mathematical, but the important, overall, very generic. It taught me how to attack problems. It taught me that I can solve complex problems, right? And it taught me that there really aren't big problems. There's just big problems that are comprised of a lot of smaller problems. And especially with topology, to me, you do so much work at building up those basic proofs, at building up those basic building blocks of understanding, that once you do that, it becomes trivial. And so you move on with your life. You're like, okay, I know that to be true. I've gone through the work of explaining it. I've had to get up in front of my peers and explain it. I know it. Let's move on. Let's roll. And then you start stacking and stacking and stacking, and all of a sudden now you solve problems that are much more complex than you originally would have thought you could have encountered. The one part that I struggled with when talking with Dr. Jeter and preparing for this class was the emphasis, and I remember when I was in his class how rigid he was with this, of independent study. And I think through how, well, you know what, we do some group work and the internet's okay. And the kind of conclusion I came to about that was, what happens when those are gone? Right? What happens when you don't have a partner or a peer next to you to lean on? What happens when those resources aren't available? What do? Obviously, you're going to slow down, but do you stop? Are you dead in the water? You know, that's one of those things, again, that I thought that topology taught me, was to see that I had the ability to, when you get stuck, okay, reset your vision, relook at the problem, attack it a different way, and then you know what, you're going to get it. So it just really taught me that. The second thing, which you may not believe based on how I'm talking right now, is the ability to effectively communicate your solution. But the importance of getting up in front of your peers and being able to explain what you've done is critically important when, and this, again, to me, transcends mathematics, right? It's not about, you know, presenting a PhD thesis on something. It's about explaining what you're doing. And if you can't do that, especially, and again, I don't want to generalize here, but as a math computer science major, we don't have the reputation of being, you know, great orators. You know, we have the reputation of being kind of closed in and hermit-like and spending time with our computers and, you know, Big Bang Theory type stuff. And that doesn't work. You have to be able to communicate with the lay people, especially when you go outside the field of academia. If you're going to sit with general managers and explain why you're trying to do what you're doing, you can't stumble over, you know, complex formulas. You have to be able to boil it down to a language that they can understand. And then the third thing there was just the confidence to lead those around you. And that's kind of a combination of the two, in that we want to raise people to lead and to change and to be impactful. And you can't do that if the only way you know how to solve a problem is to solve problems that you've been taught how to solve. And I know I kind of danced in a circle there, but, you know, too many times, one of my chief responsibilities with the Falcons is we bring in new interns every single year. And these interns are people that you work hard and you pay very little, and people would love the opportunity to do it, to be able to be in the sport of football. And we have a whole set of rigors that we have to put them through that they do on a regular basis. And one of the first things that I tell them when they sit down is, look, life doesn't give you a checklist for success. It doesn't give you this list of things that, hey, if you do this, you're going to be successful. And if it does, you're not going to, you know, you'll hit a plateau of how successful you're going to be. If you're going to be impactful and change, you have to know how to go above and beyond. And that, to me, again, is what topology really taught me. I've never had really anything that once I left Wesleyan, that while I loved that school and I thought it taught me a lot, that I thought about more than that class. So those are really the things, again, as I've sat in and listened, and I've heard people talk about it, just the importance of teaching your students on how to think, I don't think can be overstated. I think too many times, especially in universities, you're worried about almost placement of students in jobs when they graduate. And sure, you know, you can develop a program that gets them a job right out of college, and that's important. And as a parent to a daughter that will be in college eventually, I want her to get a job and move out when she graduates. But at the same token, I also want her to know how to tack things and solve things. You know, I want her to change things. I don't want her to sit into a cube and say, okay, I will fill out that form the way you want me to. I want her to challenge. And that's what I feel like the Texas method really taught me personally. So I'd love to answer any questions, or if there's anything specific to football, you know, we can talk about playoffs and how we tanked last year. We can, you know, really go however you want with this, sir. Oh wait, we need the microphone. I've been paying attention.
I'm David Cusick, and I'm not much of a football fan, but I wish to tell you, you are communicating effectively. Have no doubts about that. You're doing a fine job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Sturm, Auburn University. We did a bit
War
better
Eagle.
last year. What type of consulting did you do out after your, I guess, a bachelor's degree?
Yeah, so I graduated just with my undergrad. I did software development consulting, so I worked for McDonald's Corporation on a corporate international internet or intranet site. And then I worked for what oddly, for someone that works in the NFL, was almost kind of a dream job for me. I worked for a company called United Stationers, and I built a warehouse management system, that was all system-based. I mean, that to me, I love football. I played it. I understand it. I can talk it. Building effective systems is my passion. I mean, that's what I love in life, is being able to construct something that saves people time, that brings new kinds of inference to people, and that's where I think, and that's why I attack it with the Falcons. When I started working for them, the first thing I did was just make sure we've got our data organized, right? And we made sure that they could find the data, they could put the data in. Then we came in and we found new ways of making efficiencies. We found things that were inefficient and we fixed them. And then the last thing now that we're moving into, and this is kind of where we get back into the money ball, is we start to bring, how can we start to bring in just new inferences? How can we start to actually lead with using of intelligent data?